In a quiet little town, there was a music school where students of all ages came to learn piano. The school had many teachers, some young and full of energy, others older and more experienced. Most of the students were children or teenagers. Some wanted to play pop songs. Others dreamed of becoming famous pianists one day. But one morning, someone very different walked through the doors. She was a woman in her late 30s, maybe early 40s. Her clothes were plain and her hair tied back in a simple bun. She wore no makeup, no jewelry. She looked like someone's aunt who came along by mistake. She quietly walked up to the front desk and asked if she could join the beginner piano class. The receptionist gave her a surprised look but smiled and handed her the form. When the teachers saw her name on the new student list, some of them chuckled. They weren't trying to be mean, but it was rare to see someone that age signing up as a total beginner. One of the younger teachers whispered to another, "Maybe she just wants to learn a few nursery rhymes for her kids." The woman, however, didn't speak much. She just showed up on time, sat in the corner of the class, and listened carefully. The teacher gave her very basic exercises, a C major scale, simple one-hand pieces. She nodded and practiced without complaint. Even when the children in the class played faster than her, she didn't look embarrassed or upset. Her eyes stayed calm. Her fingers moved slowly, but exactly right. The teachers noticed that she made almost no mistakes. Still, they assumed she was just a careful student, nothing more. She didn't talk to the other students. During breaks, she sat quietly by herself, reading the music book again and again, as if trying to understand every line, every note. The children sometimes stared at her, wondering why an adult was sitting among them. But she didn't mind. She was focused in a way most people weren't used to seeing. One day, while another student was struggling with a basic piece, the teacher stepped out for a moment. The woman glanced at the piano, then slowly walked toward it. When I was thinking too much, she placed her hands on the keys and began to play the same piece perfectly. The children stopped talking. Even though it was a simple melody, the way she played it felt different. It was clean, smooth, and emotional. When the teacher came back in, he paused at the door. He heard her play and tilted his head, slightly confused. Still, no one said anything. They just thought maybe she practiced a lot at home, but what no one knew was that every evening, when she returned home, she sat at a dusty old keyboard in her small living room. The keyboard had a few broken keys, and the sound wasn't great, but she didn't care. She played for hours, her eyes closed, her fingers moving faster than anyone could imagine. She wasn't learning, she was remembering. Because long ago, before life got in the way, music had been her world. But at the music school, she kept all of that hidden. She let the teachers believe she was just a beginner. She didn't correct them. She didn't ask for harder pieces. She just waited calmly, quietly. And all the while, the teachers continued to treat her like a slow-moving student who just wanted to try something new. No one there had the slightest idea who she truly was. Not yet. In the weeks that followed, she kept coming to the music class. Always early, always quiet, she never missed a day. The other students started to get used to her presence. Some of the younger ones still whispered about her, asking each other why an older lady was learning piano with kids. But she didn't seem to notice or care. She sat in her usual corner seat, fingers placed properly on the keys, eyes focused on the sheet music in front of her. The teachers treated her like any other beginner. They gave her slow, basic songs to practice, Twinkle, Twinkle Ode, to Joy, and similar pieces. One of the teachers, a young man full of energy, joked during class, "Don't worry, even if you mess up, the piano won't bite." She smiled politely but didn't laugh. She just nodded and kept playing. Some teachers thought she was a little too serious. They would try to lighten the mood, but she stayed calm and focused, never saying much. One day when she played a simple song without a single mistake, the teacher looked surprised. "You've got good memory," he said. "Better than most of these kids?" She just smiled again and softly replied, "I try my best." But at home, her routine was completely different. Once the door was closed and the world was quiet, she sat at her old keyboard and played pieces. Far beyond beginner level, her hands moved quickly, beautifully. Chopin, Beethoven, Debussy, she played them all from memory. Her face changed when she played alone. It was no longer commit, was full of life, full of emotion. Sometimes her eyes filled with tears, but her hands never stopped. She had trained her fingers long ago, back when she was just a child, before life had taken music away from her. Still at the music school, she said nothing about her past. She didn't ask for advanced lessons. She didn't show off. She didn't try to prove anything to anyone. She just kept playing the easy songs given to her. One afternoon, the head teacher came into the class to observe. He watched the students play their short pieces one by one. When it was her turn, she played perfectly again. The head teacher raised his eyebrows slightly. After class, he called the younger teacher over and asked, "Has she had lessons before?" The young teacher shook his head. "Not that I know of. She's just really careful, I guess." The head teacher nodded but looked thoughtful. Later that day, one of the more impatient teachers, tired of giving her easy songs, handed her a much harder sheet music. It wasn't meant for beginners at all. It was a piece that even intermediate students struggled with, he said with a smile. "Try this if you're up for a challenge. See how far you get." Everyone expected her to fumble. Some students even giggled quietly, waiting to see her confused face. But she didn't react. She took the sheet in her hands, looked at it for a moment, then carefully folded it and placed it in her bag. "I'll try," she said, calmly. She went home that evening like always, walked up the stairs to her small apartment, made tea, and sat down at her keyboard. Then, with quiet confidence, she began to play the new piece. It wasn't difficult for her. Her fingers moved like they remembered every note already. Back at the school, the teacher still thought she was just an ordinary woman trying to learn something new in her free time. None of them knew they had just handed her the key to unlocking everything she had kept hidden for years. They still had no idea what she was truly capable of. The next class came. Everyone waited to see if she had even tried the new sheet. Music. The piece was known to be complex, full of fast runs and tricky finger movements. Most students would take weeks to even play the first page properly. The teacher who gave it to her sat back, arms crossed, ready to prove his point that piano was not something just anyone could pick up at any age. She walked in quietly, just like always, and took her seat at the back. The folded music sheet was in her hand. No one knew what she would do. She didn't look nervous. She didn't even look excited, just calm, like always. When the teacher asked her if she had tried the piece, she gave a small nod. He smiled and said, "Would you like to try it in front of the class?" A few students turned in their chairs to look at her. Some whispered, few smiled, expecting her to make mistakes, or maybe even refuse. But she simply stood up, walked to the piano, and placed the sheet music on the stand. She took a deep breath, placed her fingers on the keys, and began to play. From the very first note, the room changed. It wasn't just that she played the correct notes, it was how she played them with emotion, with control, with perfect rhythm. The soft parts were delicate, the loud parts powerful. Her hands moved quickly but gracefully, like they knew exactly where to go. As if she had been playing this piece all her life, every student went silent. Even the ones who usually whispered and laughed sat frozen. The teacher's smile slowly faded, replaced by a look of surprise. He glanced at the head teacher who had just stepped in and was now standing near the door, stunned. She finished the piece without a single mistake. Then she stood up, stepped away from the piano, and quietly returned to her seat. No one clapped. Not because they weren't impressed, but because they were too shocked to move. The teacher finally cleared his throat and said, "Where did you learn to play like that?" She looked at him and simply said, "I used to play a long time ago." Head teacher walked over slowly and sat beside her. "That wasn't beginner level. That was concert level performance. Why didn't you tell us before?" She didn't smile. She didn't look proud. She just looked tired, as if holding this part of herself in for so long had taken effort. "I just wanted to play again," she said. "Not to prove anything, just to feel the music again." The room stayed quiet for a long time. Finally, one of the younger students started clapping, unsure at first. Then another joined in. The whole class was applauding. Even the strict teacher who had handed her the sheet was clapping now, though he looked like he didn't know whether to feel embarrassed or amazed. That day, everything changed. She wasn't just the quiet lady at the back anymore. Students looked at her differently now, with respect, curiosity, and even awe. Teachers, too, began to treat her not as a beginner, but as someone with real experience, someone who had clearly spent years with the piano even if they still didn't know the full story. But still, she kept things to herself. She didn't talk much about her past. She didn't try to teach anyone or give advice. She still came to class early, still sat in the same seat, still practiced with quiet dedication. Only now, everyone was watching, not because they were waiting for her to fail, but because they had finally realized this woman wasn't here to learn. She was here to return to something she had once lost. The day after her surprise performance, the whole music school felt different. Students were still talking about it in the hallways. Some had recorded parts of it on their phones. Just kept asking the same question. Who is she really? She, however, remained the same. Quiet, respectful, always early. She didn't act like someone who had just shocked a room full of people. She didn't talk about what had happened. She just came in, took her seat, and waited for the lesson to begin. But the teachers had changed. Before, they had given her easy exercises without much thought. Now they carefully chose pieces that matched her skill. Some teachers even seemed nervous when speaking to her, like they weren't sure how to approach her anymore. One of them asked if she'd like to try a duet with an advanced student. She smiled gently and agreed without hesitation. The duet happened the next week. The student playing with her was one of the best in the school. He had won local competitions and was known for his fast-playing style. But when they sat down to play together, something strange happened. She didn't just keep up, she led the music. Her timing, her emotion, the way she brought the notes to life, fit with something even the best students hadn't seen before. When the piece ended, the boy turned to her and said softly, "That felt different." Like the piano was telling a story. She nodded as if she knew exactly what he meant. After that, some teachers started approaching her with questions. "Did you studied music before? Did you perform somewhere? Why did you stop?" But she never gave full answers. She would only say, "Yes, I used to play," or "It was a long time ago." No one wanted to push her too hard. It was clear she didn't want to talk. About her past, still little bits of information started to come out. One afternoon, teacher saw her waiting outside after class. He offered to walk her to the bus stop. As they walked, he gently asked, "Did something happen that made you stop playing?" She looked ahead for a moment, then said quietly, "Life happened." He didn't ask more. Something in her voice told him not to. But what she didn't say was this: years ago, she had been a rising star. She had trained at a music academy far away, under strict and talented teachers. She had been called gifted, even at a young age. But when her parents died suddenly in an accident, everything fell apart. She had to leave her studies. There was no money, no support, just her and a heavy silence that filled the house. She packed away her sheet music, closed the lid of the piano. And for many years, she didn't play a single note until now. The music school, without knowing it, had given her something she had lost: a place to remember who she was. Not a housewife. Not just a woman passing time, but a musician, real. The head teacher started asking if she would like to help out with the younger students. Not as a full teacher, but just to guide them sometimes, agreed softly. She didn't speak much, but when she played beside them, even the most distracted kids began to focus. There was something in her music that made people stop and listen, and now, the whole school had begun to notice, not just the way she played, but the way she carried music like it was a part of her soul. No. One had expected her to become the heart of the school, but slowly, without saying a word, that's exactly what she was becoming. Her presence in the music school no longer went unnoticed. What began as quiet curiosity had now turned into deep respect. Even parents waiting outside the classrooms had heard stories about the mystery woman who played like a professional. They peeked through windows just to catch a glimpse of her hands dancing over the keys. She never acted proud. She never looked for praise. She still took the same seat, brought the same worn-out bag, and greeted everyone with a soft smile. But there was a small change in how she held herself now. Her shoulders no longer drooped. Her steps had a calm strength. Something inside her had come back to life. More teachers had started asking her to sit with their students during practice. Time. They believed her presence helped the children stay focused. One day, a little girl who always struggled with rhythm sat beside her. Instead of correcting the child with words, the woman simply played the part gently, letting the girl feel the timing through the music itself. By the end of the session, the girl was smiling, something she rarely did during piano class. Even the school director had taken notice. He called her to his office, offered her tea, and asked more directly about her past. She sat quietly for a few moments, then looked up and said, "I used to play. I trained for years. But when my family passed away, I stopped. I never thought I would play again." The director didn't push for more. He just nodded and said, "Well, I'm glad you came here. You've reminded all of us what music really means." That evening, she walked home with her mind full of old memories. Her parents sitting in the front row during her childhood recitals. Her teachers back then, strict but kind. Her old piano in a room filled with sunlight. All of it felt so far away, like a life that belonged to someone else. But now every note she played was bringing those moments back. At home, her small apartment was still quiet. The only sound was the gentle hum of her old keyboard as she played late into the night. Neighbors sometimes paused near her door to listen. No one complained. Some even said it helped them sleep peacefully. One weekend, the music school planned a small in-house concert for students and their families. It was meant to be casual, nothing too formal. The idea was to let young students perform what they had learned in front of loved ones. Few teachers suggested that she perform to not as a guest, but as one of them. She wasn't sure at first. It had been so long since she had played in front of a crowd, but something inside her said yes. The day of the concert came. The room was filled with parents, students, and teachers. Some had brought flowers, some held phones ready to record. The little ones played first simple tunes, nervous fingers, proud smiles. The audience clapped after each one. Then it was her turn. She walked to the piano slowly, carefully, as if each step carried years of memories. She sat down, closed her eyes for a moment, then began to play. The room became still. She didn't play something flashy. She chose a piece that was soft and full of emotion, the kind that told a story without needing words. Each note carried something deep: peace, love, and time. When she finished, there was silence for a few seconds. Then the room burst into applause. It wasn't just loud, it was full of feeling. Some had tears in their eyes. Even the students, who didn't fully understand the music, felt something move inside them, and in that moment, for the first time in many years, she allowed herself to smile, not the polite smile she always gave, but a real one, because now, the music was not just a part of her past, it had become her present. After the concert, everything changed, even though she stayed the same. She still came early to class, still wore her simple clothes, and still spoke in a gentle voice. But now, when she walked into the music school, people looked at her with quiet admiration. Even the youngest students who didn't fully understand music would stop and smile at her in the hallway. The applause from the concert had followed her home, not in sound, but in feeling. Something had shifted deep inside her. For years, she had felt like she was just getting through life, day by day, moment by moment. Now, for the first time in a long while, she felt like she had a purpose again. Not just to play, but to share. The teachers began inviting her to sit in on more advanced lessons, not to learn, but to support. Some even asked if she could help students who were struggling. She didn't call herself a teacher, but when she sat beside someone at the piano, it was like magic. She didn't give long lectures or point fingers. She simply played, softly, patiently, again and again, till the student understood. Not just with their hands, but with their heart. Word began to spread beyond the school. A local music group heard about her and invited her to a small evening gathering. She was nervous at first. She hadn't played outside the school in years. But she agreed. The gathering was held at a small cultural center. It wasn't fancy, just a few rows of chairs, a few candles, and a grand piano placed near a window. The audience was mixed older folks who loved classical music, young artists looking for inspiration, and even a few people who had never listened to piano music before. When she sat down to play, there was no spotlight, no big stage. Just her, the piano, and the quiet breath of the room. She played a piece she had once written herself, a soft, haunting melody that sounded like a memory. People closed their eyes. Some held hands. One woman silently wiped away a tear. After she finished, someone asked her where the piece came from. She thought for a moment and said, "It came from everything I never said out loud." The room stayed quiet after that. Back at the music school, students began requesting her by name. "Can she sit with me today?" they would ask. Even students who had once laughed behind her back now waited for her attention. Not because she was famous, not because of any title, but because they could feel something in the way she played, something honest, something true. The head of the school invited her for a private talk one morning, told her gently that the school would like to offer her a position. Nothing big at first, just a few hours a week, helping with students, guiding them, sharing what she knew. She didn't answer right away. She looked down at her hands that had once been silent for years. Anne said softly, "I'll try." That night, she walked home with slow steps. The air was cool. The streets were quiet. For the first time, she didn't feel alone. The music wasn't just something she carried inside her anymore now. Others could hear it too. It wasn't about fame or being the best. It was about connection, about reaching someone without needing words. Maybe, just maybe, helping someone else find their way through the dark just like music had helped her. The sun was setting behind the trees as she sat alone in the empty music room. The soft orange light came through the tall windows and touched the piano keys gently, as if nature itself wanted to listen one more time. She placed her hands on the piano, but didn't play yet. She just sat there, remembering how far she had come. It had been many months since the day she first walked into that school as a quiet beginner. Back then, she had carried only silence and sadness with her. Now, things were different. She didn't just play the piano, she brought it to life. And she had helped others find their sound too. Her life was still simple. She still lived in the same small apartment. Still used the same old keyboard at home. Their days were no longer quiet and lonely. She now spent part of the week guiding students, helping them feel the music instead of just reading it. Some came in shy, nervous, or unsure. But after spending time with her, they left with confidence, smiles, and something new in their hearts. The music school had also changed. It felt warmer now, less strict, more alive. Teachers worked together more. Students helped one another. And in the center of it all was her, not loud, not in charge, but present, kind, steady, the soul of the school. One evening, the school held a special event. It was called Evening of Hope. It wasn't just for students, it was open too. Families, guests, and anyone who had a love for music. The goal was simple, to remind people why music matters. They asked her to close the evening with one final performance. She didn't want anything grand or complicated. She chose a gentle piece she had written during her quiet years. Had never been played in public before. Didn't have a fancy title or fast runs. It was just honest, full of emotion, full of memory. When the moment came, she walked to the piano in front of the crowd. Some people had seen her perform before. Others were seeing her for the first time. But everyone fell silent the moment she sat down. She didn't look at the audience. She didn't even look at the keys. She closed her eyes and began to play. The room filled with soft, flowing notes. Each one carried something with it: pain, joy, silence, strength. Some people cried quietly. Others sat with their hands over their hearts. Even the children didn't fidget or whisper. The music had taken hold of the room, like a story being told in a language everyone understood. When the last note faded into the air, she lifted her hands gently and opened her eyes, and what she saw was something she would never forget. The entire room was standing, not with loud cheers, but with quiet, full hearts. Some clapped slowly, some just nodded with tears in their eyes. No words were needed. After the event, many came to thank her. But the most touching moment came from a little boy who walked up to her with a nervous smile. He said softly, "I want to play like you one day. Not fast, just beautiful." She smiled, knelt down, and replied, "You already can. Just listen to your heart." That night, as she walked home under the stars, her steps were light, the wind felt gentle, and the silence around her no longer felt empty. It felt peaceful, because she had found her place again, not on a stage, not in a spotlight, but in every note she played, every student she helped. In every quiet moment when music said what words could not. She hadn't come to the music school to impress anyone. She had come to remember who she was, and now everyone else remembered too.